Welcome to From Dream to Silver Screen, the podcast that follows the whole journey of making WAGYU Films' debut movie, Patriarch. The team are going to take you through acquiring funding, pre-production, filming, editing, visual effects, and even selling the film, all while providing hours of advice for filmmakers, actors, and crew, with hopefully a few laughs along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Zimplify, sales and marketing automation software that helps your business grow fast. Go to zimplify.com/patriarch to get 20% off your first 3 months. That's zymplify.com/patriarch. We're also sponsored by Mostly T-shirts, mostly.com. Fun and random t-shirts and hoodies for real film fans. See if you can get the references. Visit mostlytshirtsmostly.com to buy your next favorite t-shirt. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the podcast again, guys. My name's David Roberts. I'm the director of Patriarch, and I'm joined here today. Right, everybody keeps telling me how terrible I am at actually getting around the whole table without messing up one name or job title. Do you think I can do it, or would you rather say your name and your job title like it's an AA meeting?
No,
I would prefer you to do it. I want grandeur. I feel like someone when you introduce me.
Okay.
And it's a lot of pressure when you just go, hi.
Okay, so firstly we'll introduce Mr. Sean Bishop. He's the director of photography on Patriarch.
Hi.
There you go. Mr. Scott Bishop, no relation to anybody apart from Sean, who is the post-production and visual effects supervisor. See, I've fucked that up already because I can never remember, is it visual effects first or post-production first?
I don't think it really matters.
I don't think anyone would have noticed, but you've just
doing
made that a big deal.
He's just the guy.
I'm just going to be doing everything.
He makes
afterwards.
He makes everything that Sean does look good.
Yeah. Whenever we go short, Scott will fix that.
Yeah.
Scott's the guy. We'll fix that in post. That's Scott's
The
job.
professional cloud guy. That's the...
Add more
cloud.
Smoke.
Can you add more
Needs
clouds
more
to that,
cloud.
Scott?
More smoke, please.
Yeah, that's me.
No more smoke. And production designer Keith Lupton.
Hello.
Wow, that was too much.
I'm buzzing. The sun's out.
Right, so what we're talking about today, guys, after that very long-winded introduction, is how to pretty much develop the best script possible. So we're going to talk a little bit about the writing of Patriarch. I would recommend listening to our How to Get Your Film Funded podcast. That was just myself and Scott, because we talk a lot about the script from a kind of a production standpoint. But what we're going to talk about is we've got some questions about the Patriarch script, and then we're going to give you a load of pointers, which is basically when you're writing your own script, how to A, improve the quality of it, how to improve the dialogue, the structure, and B, how to maybe get it done quicker, because sometimes it's not a particularly short process, but sometimes it's getting it finished. If anybody out there has a finished screenplay, you should really give yourself a pat on the back, because that's the first tricky thing is actually just finishing one. There's not many people in the world who can actually say they've finished a script.
Guarantee your film won't look the same, no?
Yeah, it won't. But
Guarantee your film won't look what you've written.
So we'll start. So I'll try and so if anybody's not yet know what the story of Patriarch is, I'll do a little log line for it, just so basically Patriarch is. So there was this cataclysmic disaster at this scientific research facility, causing all life in about 100 miles. It just wipes out all life around 50 miles, 100 miles of, and causes a kind of a quarantine zone in an area of North Wales. And then the military patroller, nobody ever comes in and out. And 7 years later, without incident, a lone scientist is found walking out of the quarantine zone, terrified but without a scratch. And so the film's all based around an interrogation with an MI5 officer trying to explain where this person's been, why is he acting so strange, and why is he talking about the end of everything. So it's
that's a nice little rundown.
There you go. So it's very
where did the original idea and concept come from, Dave?
Well, I think it originally came from, kind of going back to, we wanted to produce a film that we could do. So that was my kind of brief, was to write, go away and make a script we can do. And I think a lot of what we did was very making it practical, and we wanted to do kind of a dark thriller with horror elements and sci-fi elements, but without aliens, there's too many zombie things. We do get a lot from our social media. I think we do get a fair bit of, because our social's always covered in people wearing gas masks in it. So a lot of people I think it's a zombie film of some kind. But weirdly, with our film, it's only like the last 10 minutes which has anybody wearing masks, really. But I think it's more from a love of things like old school sci-fi, which is kind of a bit more smarter and clever and weird, you know, like X-Files and The Twilight Zone and Twin Peaks. I wouldn't really say sci-fi, but you know, that strangeness that you don't really get enough anymore. Yeah, and but there is obviously a long, deep love of things like Aliens, you know, which is just awesome excitement, suspense, a bit of horror in there. So it's kind of wanted to do a mixture of the two. So you want a film which is kind of strange and well made and not arty, but you know, like visually stunning, but also has a bit of the excitement and things like Aliens.
So, when you sat down, we talked about how you wanted to make a film that we can make. Where did you start with just putting things down on paper?
Well, I think because we've been doing it for so long as a production company doing our commercial stuff, it kind of gets to a point where you think, even though we have got the gear and the experience and things like that, you still think, oh no, we're not from Hollywood, and you know, we're not. That's for other people, you know, because we were just always, you know, you always taught that that's maybe not for lads from Cornwall or lads from Rhyl in North Wales or lads from Huyton in Merseyside. It's kind of, that's for other people, you know. But I remember it was really around the time watching, it's weird, but just watching Monsters, the making of Gareth Edwards' film Monsters, because that film was so kind of, and this is, I think it's a brilliant film. It's actually beautifully made. Visual effects is really great. The acting's amazing. And it's so kind of, I don't want to use the word thrown together, but it was very the cameras they were using were not particularly impressive. They were kind of, at the time, kind of similar to the ones we were using for more kind of commercial stuff, but just with better lenses on them and things like that. So that actually kind of says, oh, we can do it. Then we just need more practice. And obviously we started writing it, bloody hell, it was like 6 or 7 years ago now, wasn't it? From
longer than that.
First putting it down, like, and talking about an idea. So then it came down to, well, what could be a good story with a handful of characters, a handful of locations, without being just two guys in a room type film, with some outdoorsy stuff, because then it becomes, you can have a big story in a big world, but in a way that you can actually make it smaller. So it's more starting with that concept and then working out what are the stuff that I and you guys, most of the stuff we typically love, and it tends to be horror, sci-fi type stuff, doesn't it? So it was coming from a part of what film could we actually make, but kind of, wouldn't it be cool if it was actually in the style of all the stuff that we grew up loving, you know? So, and then I think I came to you guys, probably the first ones I showed you guys probably wasn't the first draft. It was probably, I've probably done a couple by that point. But even showing you then, it was a bit too ambitious, I would say. And plus it was very I wouldn't even like to read it now to see how horrible it is. But can you remember what the first kind of reactions was, or what you thought, or what the bits you thought were good? What do you think needed chopping out? Because it's the same through line, is that the word, is there? But it's very different. There's even kind of things of, like, I remember we talked about it before, Scott, like, I remember one of your, it wasn't even it was many drafts later, but you were talking about there was a character shift and we needed to have another character in, really, so that one character wasn't changing so much. So there was Peterson, who was kind of the person in charge of this military facility patrolling the quarantine zone, and he started off very kind of to the point and very English officer type thing, and then all of a sudden he turns a bit evil, but you think, no, he needs to have a sidekick, which is
there was no need for him to change.
Aggressive, yeah. And I thought that was a good part, but it was weird talking about, like, oh no, that'll cost us an extra couple of grand because that's another actor, and so it's weird when you go from a writer's hat to a producer's hat. But I don't know, can you remember do you remember your first initial thoughts?
Well, I think Keith had a good point earlier. Yeah, once you've had the script written and everything, it doesn't matter if you give out to people to read. Actually sitting down and having a read through aloud with each other kind of helps bring out all the bad points and all the good points as well. But like I can remember when the first time we did it, you had written in so many swear words, which were just so completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it was like every other kind of sentence someone said something, there was a fuck you or fuck the piss.
Yeah.
And stuff. Like there was no need for it.
No.
So I think when you get people to sit down and actually kind of go through it, you start hearing the development of a character, not just reading the development of the character.
Yeah, and I think now it's when you just take them all out, you realise that when you start watching films, you realise that a lot of swear words are actually, what's the word, character improvisation, actor improvisation. So usually, and actually, if you put lots of swearing, have you ever read a Tarantino script? That's quite hilarious to read because the amount of swearing in it, but. You'll notice if you put lots of swearing into the script, I've now found that the actor will just swear more. Do you know what I mean? Because he's actually, so whenever they get angry and they'll just fuck this and fuck, and then it's made it a lot worse. So that's a good point. It's just kind of like once you took all now there's a handful in it, but there's a point whenever somebody swears.
Yeah, there's got to be a reason behind
the unnatural dialogue comes out. It's like
sometimes it makes
swearing in an unnatural situation or
because you don't know what the actor said. Because I might have an actor, or say I'm thinking of somebody saying it a certain way, but then, as I said, like when we do a read through of it, hearing like say you read it out loud, it's like, oh fucking hell, that was.
Or Keith does his Batman voice.
Batman voice.
Yeah, when we do read through, Keith
It
can't
fits,
talk normally.
It fits with everyone.
With
everything. To do a Batman voice.
Even with Edwards.
Yeah, even the women.
She sounds quite gravelly, but yeah, it works.
But that was quite exciting as well, actually, the first time we ever did it. And the second, sometimes after that was very kind of looking at it from a technical point of view, but just, you could tell very quickly which bit worked. Like, I think it was always obvious that there's like a big ambush scene where people go into the quarantine zone to find somebody. And I always thought that always worked, because I think the dialogue's improved, but the scene never changed much. Because I think we always put, especially when you put like a bit of background music on when you're reading it and things like that. But there's other ones, not just the dialogue. There's parts where you just see this. That scene's pointless. You can maybe shorten that down. Because I think the script also was about 130 pages or something.
It's longer than that.
And it's about 90 something. Or I think 101, 102 now. So there's a lot of shaking. I always say any good piece of writing, you can pick it up and shake it and a third of it will fall out and it'll still be just as good. So I took out a lot of the pointless description that I didn't need. But actually taking it and reading out loud, that was the first time you can actually tell if it's good or not in it, really. Yeah, I don't know, it was interesting, but it was quite quickly to understand which bits were needed fixing, I suppose.
I definitely remember the first time reading it, the ambush scene. All I could think of in my mind was Alien or Aliens. That's all I could think of.
Urgency of when they first attack.
All I could think of was Aliens. The whole
when they
time.
move into the because there's a very similar scene, because in Aliens you got them going into the height, and then there's somebody somewhere rippling out watching on the screen, and it's very similar to that, where there's somebody in
the tension's building, isn't it?
Watching it on screens and what's happening, and
and we were all getting into it in terms, like we had a little bit of background music playing as well, didn't we? And we were all getting into it. It's playing to the ice,
Game over, man.
Ice to the woods. Contact.
It's actually interesting as well when you sent it to other people, like when you sent it to our casting director for the first time and seeing her feed, because she'd look at it from an actor's point of view. Which we always looked at it from a very technical point of view of, well, how the hell are we going to film that? Where she was thinking of, well, if actor reads this, or like it's ages until you get to this character, or there's a scene which slows the pace of it down and things like that, which is just, how is it to read, which was quite interesting and I thought was helpful. So I would recommend, if you've got anybody that you kind of trust who isn't in the inner circle of the production, so to speak, and
anyone whose feelings aren't involved.
Yeah, there was a little bit back, because at that point when we showed her, that was ready to actually give out to actors. So at that point, because at the beginning I'm very much, how can we improve this? Let's make it better. But when we've sat there and tried to improve it for ages, and then somebody else picks it, it's kind of like, well, okay.
I'll take
I
it
see,
on
I see,
board.
you see what you're trying to say?
You jumped to that quite quick. Why did you?
We'll keep that in 5 minutes. Somebody's in a fucking bad mood today.
You went straight to the shit sandwich, did you? Oh.
But yeah, she had a good point. So it's sometimes you don't hear the sentence before where she's like, "It's all really that's really interesting. I love the suspense. The thrill of it and suspense. There's a scene in there, and it's like there's no fucking scene, nothing. Keep. But yeah, yeah. But so you got to take feedback. If you're a writer and you can't take feedback, you're in for a trouble, because there is certain points where even when I'd come in, that kind of thing. Do you know what we've talked about before, when it's kind of even like when we've come in with an edit of a video, and then as soon as you show somebody else, you instantly see that, oh, fucking hell, that's no good. That's, I'm just working on the sound and all that. It's very much like that with a script.
Yeah,
as
you've
well.
got your tunnel vision on, haven't you?
As soon as I'm like, oh, this is great, and then I bang it to somebody, and then you just hear it reading, and you see reactions of not everybody saying something, it's just kind of like, you're kind of like, yeah, and it's rare that it didn't. I don't think there was ever any feedback I didn't agree with. You know, unless there was a reason for it. There's usually a reason you've done something because you've already thought of that problem and you had to go that way. But most of the time, especially if you got a couple of people in a room both saying, "Yeah, this bit doesn't work," or "This bit's a little bit clunky," or "That bit reminds me too much," because it's all right if you felt the same kind of tension as Aliens and stuff like that, but if you just went, "This is just a copy of the Aliens," that'd be a bit more of a problem.
Why are they all hatching?
Yeah.
Do you have obviously when people write scripts, they have different processes and stuff like that. Do you have a process? Because I've seen people draw up flowcharts, create their curves, add in elements, plot points that they need to hit, and then sit down and write. Whereas some people just spew out dialogue and then as they go along, something comes into their head and they continue on with that grow, and then that's how they chop down from there. Whereas I've seen people be very formulaic instead of more inspiration driven or something like that.
That's it, because people say you can kind of break down a story in terms of like a 12-hour clock. You can take like an Indiana Jones film and you can kind of time out where things are going to happen. And so in like that kind of formula aspect, there's like, here's balance at the start of it. Something happens, the character learns something, and then you've got that kind of 12-hour system. Yeah.
There's twist comes here.
Yeah. And it all
revelation
mirrors
about
each other.
Anti-hero here.
My way, as I do bullet points. I think if I just sat down and kind of just went, once upon a time, I'd be pretty knackered. So first of all, I think kind of like even with our anthology horror film we got coming up with, so we're all directing a section of a horror films all set under one creepy village, under one creepy night, etc., etc. But I think then even then I noticed I write quite fast compared to you guys a little bit, just because I think it was more because I'm used to it from driving the script. But I think the only reason I was able to do so quickly.
No, you don't have a child hanging off your arm. I'd love to go home and just write. I get stood on when I walk through the door. I get a head charging at my crotch within seconds after the door.
That's an excuse. And then
I'm not in the mood for writing.
Then you sit down and watch
after
Coronation Street for 3 hours. So.
I don't even know what Coronation Street is anymore.
But no, the way I do is it's always with bullet points. So it's always starts off with 3 bullet points. First 3 acts. How do you want to start? How do you want it to end? What happens in the middle? Then each point I'll add 5 more bullet points to each section. What's the points I want to do? So in the beginning, you need to do 5 sections, and then eventually you get to the point where each section has 20 bullet points each. And then actually at that point, I'd start writing the scenes I'm excited about, because I couldn't see myself writing from the beginning to the end. I think I helped you guys.
That's
with
interesting.
Scripts,
yeah, that's interesting.
Where
yeah.
I lose interest in an idea very quickly. So I'll write the bit. So like for example with Patriarch, I would write the ambush scene. There's a torture scene in it. There's the bit at the end, the big climax type thing. I'd write those bits first,
and then just meld into each one,
and then join the dots. because then I feel myself I'm getting somewhere. If you constantly feel like, oh God, I'm still in Act 1 and I've been writing for weeks, it's a bit of a shock to the, what's the word, disheartening, that, oh God, I don't feel I'm getting anywhere. Which, I don't know, other people might think that, yeah, but you're disjointed everywhere, but I'm writing the bits I'm impressed at. And I have a habit of putting sentences on my phone. If anybody gets on my phone, they'll probably think that it's a diary of a madman, because if I ever think of something or driving about or something like that, I'll put a sentence which is just interesting, and then I'll usually try and make an excuse to use that somewhere, and that often starts a conversation. When it comes to conversations, I've heard Tarantino do it a little bit, where he writes and he doesn't know where the conversation's going to go. I don't particularly do that so much, but I do find once I've got what's the 3 bullet points I want to get across in the conversation, I could usually write it in one fell swoop, because I know where it's going rather than umming and ahhing about each word. But then it's just about coming back and looking at it again, and you could usually see the faults of it and then keep improving it, usually shortening it and improving it, but that's the way I do it. So it's the bullet points, then you add more bullet points to each section, then write the bits that I'm excited about, because there's no point thinking, in a couple of weeks I'll be able to get to the ambush scene. Do you know what I mean? And that seems like a slog. and plus you want to be excited about it. So, or maybe I don't particularly do it. I do tend to do the boring bits at the end. Well, shouldn't be any boring bits, but I do the bits which are just the conversation-y and the hallway type bits towards the end. And that does then it feels like a slog, and this feels like work. I was like, yeah, of course it's work, you dickhead. Not everybody can do it. Yeah, so that's my way of doing it. I find it does it quite quick. So as soon as you come up with an idea, what are the 3 points I want to get across? And then usually what do I find most interesting about the 3 is like, there's an interesting opening scene. Great, well, let's think about that, and blah, 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 blah. And that's also a way of, like for Infernal, when I wanted to write 3 or 4 scripts really quick to show you guys, it's not as if I wrote 4 scripts. I did 4 bullet points, and then it was which one got fleshed out quickest. Eventually got to the point with, I just need to join the dots of and do some dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty much how I'd recommend other people do it, but I think some people, if you just had to work out, I can see how some people do cards for scenes, they lay them out in terms of like, but even that way, I think I think you're stuck to that sequence in a way, where kind of with the bullet point thing, I can still change things in the middle or the beginning or something like that, and you actually come up with more ideas as I'm doing it, rather than step 1, step 2, step 3. I don't know, everybody's different, but I've just found that's my way of doing it.
Do you just sit down at the table, like when you get home, you've had something to eat, and then right, Dave's ready to write some bullet points.
Glass of red.
Or do you sit down and just watch Netflix and?
No. It's
that was dad envy coming from there.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your lovely life, Dave.
I have to wait until my missus goes to sleep. I don't just sit there going in front of it. Right, I have to wait. So I have to wait when she goes to sleep quite early. Like, so when she goes to sleep at like 10, I'm not doing some writing until 10 till 1 or something like that.
I'm usually having my tea at 10.
But the problem when you're in the middle of writing a script is actually, I find it horrible, because every time I'm having time off, I felt guilty, because it's kind of like we got the production company work in the day when I'm writing that, and the time you're just like, I don't want to do anything. I never enjoyed my weekends or times off, because I was just thinking, that's a waste of a day. Should have been doing. So you're too busy thinking, in an hour I'll sit down and I'll do that thing. I'll do that tonight or something. So it was always. I usually found I did most of my writing early doors or very late at night.
Yeah, no, I talked to loads of people who set themselves a task of up early, write for an hour. Then whatever happens after that hour is a bonus. Yeah,
I got through a big chunk of it by just getting up at 6 and working from 7 till, say, 8:30, and then come to the studio. It's just, I try, and because we had so much other work in the production company, I kind of felt guilty. Even though it's work, you still feel that weird guilt. Oh, God, we're not getting paid for that for years, so we can't need to work on some of those paid jobs. But now... Oh, yeah, no problem. Sean's got to shoot off. He says goodbye, everybody. What's your final point, or if you got one piece of advice for somebody, because we're about to move into what's a piece of advice? Just what's your best piece of advice for somebody to improve the quality of the script?
Is talk to real life people to help from certain fields to help your dialogue flow. Don't assume that because you've watched an army movie or a couple of army movies, you know how personnel in the army speak. Like take Dave for example. There is quite a heavy military aspect. Dave has family members within the military. He's also got friends within the military, so we passed the script to them to see what they think. They highlighted certain things that just weren't said, wasn't right in saying in certain situations. How banter between personnel would be.
He was like, he was saying how he liked the banter, and you'd say this and you wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say certain terminologies, and it's like you want to avoid those things where you go that someone who knows about that field of life, like watching SES Who Dares Wins, doesn't mean we know what the SES, how the SES talk or how they are in bants mode. So that's we want those people to be also part of our fan base, even though they might not be sci-fi fans. They will be fans of the military because they're part of that family. But we don't want to piss on that culture. We want them,
especially when you've got fantastical sci-fi element. You've got to keep certain bits as kept into realism as possible. And there's cool. You actually find there's cooler ways of saying stuff, because I was using the word command on the radio and things like that, because a lot of American ones do. And the UK Army, if they got a HQ base, they call it zero. So it's going to like, come in zero. This is Bravo. I wouldn't have had a frigging clue. I did all I've done all the Googling in the world for like terminology. I never saw zero once, but apparently all communications to it. And then the person in charge at zero. So at zero, you got a captain or a lieutenant or something. They're called Sunray. So zero, this is Bravo. I need to talk to Sunray immediately if there's a problem. And you're like, oh, okay, that sounds cool.
See, it's a nod or a tip of the hat to people within that field. If we were going to do something about ice cream, we would talk to someone who works in an ice cream industry.
You get what he's talking about. If you say zero, this is Bravo. I need to talk to Sunray, and then somebody else picks up the phone.
The layman makes the connection,
and then sounds good as well.
The layman makes the connection, and the person who's actually knowledged in it goes, nice one,
that's
guys.
It, but if you're doing medical
way to
stuff,
go, Wagyu.
Yeah, if you're doing medical stuff, talk to a doctor. If you're doing engineering techie stuff, talk to a techie person. You'll actually, apart from the fact you'll actually find it more accurate, Sean's trying to sneak out now quietly without creeping out. See you later. So talk to anything to do with it, really, isn't it? So, I mean, we've got, if you're not a parent, maybe and you've got lots of parents with kids conversations and things like that. Maybe talk to a parent of how people interact and how kids actually act and things like that. That's a really good point, isn't it? Really. So what would you say then if you're trying to? Anybody needs to improve their dialogue, just from our experience or from your experience writing the Infernal scripts and things like that? What's a way of?
Scott mentioned mine before, which is literally just reading it, getting a couple of guys together and just reading the script. Just helps massively in terms of the dialogue and how it's said. And would that person say that?
What I found is there was a massive difference between what a sentence looks like on a page and what it actually sounds like out loud spoken, because it could look really good on the page, and in your head it might sound really good, but you've got to give it to an actor who's got to actually say it, and you don't want to try and force them to say it in a way that it's like in your head. If you really want to piss off an actor, do a line reading for him. Say, no, say it like this. Actors instantly stop listening to you and lose all respect for you. They see their job as people who come in, they interpret the script in a way that you give them direction and how, what they're feeling and what kind of, are they exhausted and are they excited, are they this and this, are you going too fast or too slow, etc. But do not just say, no, you say it like, don't go in there. If you say it like that, actors have just instantly lost respect for
That's
it.
something that we noticed as well, isn't it? When we got the first couple of casting videos back from people who we want to play, like the main character, you notice that some people will put like so much emphasis and exaggeration into certain sentences, whilst the next person will just read it in such a monotone way. And there's so many different ways of saying a certain sentence to come across in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite interesting.
I like my script to kind of read like a book. So I like to. The reason why the original script was 144 pages wasn't loads of dialogue; it was description.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's supposed to be an enjoyable read. But from the script, you need to get to the point where you don't need to give them direction. Do you see what I mean? So if we give them a minimal version of the script or something, where they're because we're mainly talking there about people we got with smaller agencies, we're trying to get on small short films or commercials and things like that, and you just give them a few lines to read rather than like a full script. It's so what I try and say is try and put as much description into it so you don't waste everybody's time. So the actor who's reading it completely understands what the characters sound, because we've saying before, like some kind. There's who's the one before who's kind of, we wanted this is a scene in a different film we're doing, which has got like a guy, possessed guy, but he comes across as he's quite cool and quite kind of like the whole spunk to be. It's more unsettling how calm he is. Yeah. Where the audition was just like, what? I'm a demon, and it was a really.
It's kind of like a Krusty the Clown kind of.
Is that the priest?
No, it was actually the demon. Do you know when?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know. But yeah, it just because I put a bit of I put the script down for him to read it, to see the whole atmosphere, what we were going for, so we can kind of get a bit of an idea of how we wanted them to be, a bit of direction of what he's been through as well, so how we should be acting. And then he came back and. You do actually notice that a lot of actors as well do actually just straight out skip the description bit and 100%. Just go to the dialogue, and I think that's what that guy did. You should also try and put some description in the. Do you know the little brackets? They're called parentheals. What are they called? Oh God, I'm a scriptwriter. I really should know that word, but you know what I mean. You have the character name, then underneath you have some brackets describing like. Sounding exhausted. Yeah. And then you should maybe try and use them because they're harder to get skipped. Like talking of Aliens, I was watching the making of the other week, and it amazed me when an actor as amazing as Sigourney Weaver, she says that she has a habit of just going through the scripts and just looking at the dialogue all the way through. And halfway through when they were making the film, she was like, "Why are there so many guns?" Because she was saying that there was no speaking of guns in the description. It's all like just people walking around, and then she was like, I'm holding a flamethrower? Which can't have been too true, because surely, but she did say that I think she knew there was some of them, but didn't realize there was so many. Yeah. So what can you do? So in terms of, for the she's probably watched Alien, watched Alien back and we're like, there's zero guns. And then we're like, wow, this one's got, every scene's got a gun in it.
But I've read James Cameron's script, and it's actually really good. So it's just, I think they just skim to their point. Most actors that, like a casting director, our casting director was talking about when we were putting together like an info pack for our like name actors that we're talking with. Is very much, she came back and said very much like, this pack's good, but you're talking a lot about the film and how you're making it with storyboards and inspiration and ideas and all that, and you've only done a little bit about characters. You've got to realize that the only bit the actor really gives a shit about is the character bit. Oh, okay, so I had to do like a page for each character and their background and stuff like that. So but you've got to try and use any tactics you can to try and make them understand the direction without actually having a director there. So it's trying to put brackets of what they're feeling, try and put I use bold. In fact, a lot of people don't like it because but I occasionally use bold and italics in description, and I've usually found that when people are scan reading, they'll actually see those bits. And I know you get a lot of sniffy pillocks about the structure of scripts and how they're supposed to be written. I mean, I use final draft, so it's kind of like the right structure. But there's other little things like I thought, well, you cut away to something, you're supposed to have like external some day.
This is what I was going to bring.
And then just like a person there doing something for 2 seconds, then you cut back to the thing. And I've always done that, and it was always jarring when you're reading it. But then I read a Chris Nolan script, and he just, in the normal, he just put the words in bold, insert cut, a guy falls off or something, and then continuing the scene. I was like, oh, that's cheating, but I'll do that. And at the end of the day, people reading it, they get it. Do you see what I mean? The structure is, in terms of the actual how you format a script, isn't really that important in terms of. You don't go too ridiculously away from the norm. But
I was going to say, because there is a standard to actually writing the script, but everybody does their own personalisation on it. Yeah,
and doing the cutaway for people like. Well, you want to. I'd really recommend not from an awesome script writing, but Shane Black, the guy who wrote Lethal Weapon. He's Hawkins in Predator.
I was going to say,
he's written a million things. But he actually put description in the script about how awesome the script is. It was kind of like, I can't remember, some of the lines of halfway through, there's a couple of lines of saying something lines, are you getting it yet? This is a pretty fucking cool film. I get you're going to buy it for $1 million. Anyway, back to the story. Or not that, but something like that. And I thought, so everybody's different. But you got to think human beings are going to read it. So could you put some personality in it and make it a little different and things like that? Yeah, do you have any other tips? You think?
Well, that was actually going to be my kind of main point about the whole structure of scripts and things like that. Because, there are other... You've made the point. There's no point in me repeating it. Trying to think of something else to say now.
What are you thinking about that? I've got a really good tip for anybody trying to finish a script. A huge reason that the script took so long to do and all the different rewrites and things like that. I am terrible for coming back the next day and just remember where I'm up to. I'll read the last scene again, and then I'll spend all night changing that scene. And then I'm too tired to keep going. So the next day I'll come back and just so I can remember, I'll have a look at this and I'll look at that. So once you've written a scene, don't go back and look at it again until you're finished. Well, you scan it to understand. You should have notes about where you are and where you are next. In terms of the actual typed up script on a computer, don't stress about going through the last bit. I mean, I've done it before where I've got halfway through and I'm like, I really should start from just give it one read from the beginning just to see what it reads like. And then I'll spend a night changing to just the first two scenes and I'll do it. And that might be my friggin' Seinfeld style nervosities, but that was I think it's okay, just finish the script because it's hell of an achievement once you're finished. When I first finished it, I wasn't like fucking do that. It was just more like you know, that weight off your shoulders and like, oh, I was so happy. But you need to understand that first draft is going to be crap. It's just But then that's the point. So finish it and then go back and tweak it. My problem was I'll read the last couple of bits just to get back in the mind frame or just remember where I'm up to and things like that. You should have a clear idea of where you're up to at all points.
But then that all comes down to how you're feeling that day, because you could have a completely different, like could have had a shit day, reading it again, it's like, oh, this sounds shit. But then you could have had a good day and it could, it just affects everything.
And plus you just tweak and tweak and tweak. There's a point where you've just got to show somebody else. So I think I'd say just write it all. Don't just write each, as I say, if you're going to do my bullet point system, or just even if you start from scene one right to the end, just do that and don't worry about how well written the scene you did last was. Just keep going. And then once you get to the end, you actually kind of, what's the word? You just have a real sense of achievement of finishing it. And don't be too, sad if you think, I'm not too confident about it. I don't think anybody's written one script first draft and it's just been amazing. You go through and you improve I very much went through, then I look at it from a story. I don't worry about dialogue. I'd say one of my strengths is dialogue, but...
dialogue can get changed,
exactly.
Even on the day.
Yeah, exactly. And the actor will change it. Paraphrase.
I think that's a good point of having a good actor as well, because they can add on to what they were going to say.
I was watching, just talking about auditions. We were watching auditions before for Ben, and a couple of them were like paraphrase, just change a couple of words. I was like, well, that's not right. Who's this guy think he is? But that's going to happen on set. It just doesn't mean his version wasn't any worse or better. It was just different. But he was still saying the same. He just used a different word. Oh, yeah. So it's professional.
Thanks,
Siri. Thanks, Siri, for that.
Thanks, Siri.
Let's leave a note for the person who was paraphrasing to say he didn't get it. Is that what you're saying?
Okay.
Has that been emailed to him now?
Siri, tell that guy it's fine.
Put an X next to his name.
But yeah, so it's dialogue could always be changed, so it's a constantly evolving thing. But I'd go, does the story make sense? Is the story exciting? Is there suspense? Is there a flow to it? Does this scene? Do you need this scene? Another big reason, like I was saying in a previous podcast, the big reason why we're taking so long was we start looking at it from a production, because that's the other thing. Do you want to write this script to sell it, or do you want to write it to produce it and make it? Then that can be treated very differently, because we were making it, we would start turning a couple of characters into one character, and we were turning all these different locations that we had. It was just, couldn't that just be done in that location as well? And so you got to really think of, are you selling this or you're making it? And you do always hear, usually people who've had money thrown at them to produce films say the words like, no, just write the script you want and follow your dreams and all that. And you find these skint filmmakers following that stupid advice. So it's more, do that on your second or third film. Your first film should be something you can, if you're planning to make it, think about that in the writing of it. Do you need two characters and one character can be done in that? Do you need police turn up? Does it need to be two detectives? You're going to have to pay that guy, one of those guys, to come. Could it just be one and somebody else hovers in the background as an extra? It's little things like that. So I try and have a think of what I did I'd say with Patriarch, it was very much passes of just get it done, then go through to where could improve the story and the flow and where does it slog and things like that. Then I'd go through it from like a production standpoint of kind of which bits, that's going to be too difficult. That's too much CGI in that bit or something like that. That's too inexpensive a location. We'll never get that. And then I'll go through dialogue. Dialogue is the most fun bit to write for me. Dialogue's the bit I enjoy most. So I usually tend to feel that writing dialogue at the beginning was usually relatively spot on, and then at the end, not spot on, but you know what I mean. It's kind of like it's looking at it later on, and just in terms of from a fresh eye, thinking, that's a bit clunky, blah 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 blah, and I don't mind changing it. But what are you going to do? I think that's a big point. Is what do you want to make this one? Or because I've got other scripts, I think I could just flog that, and we're never going to make that in a million years. But I'm not particularly passionate about them, because I'm not going to spend a lot of my time when this takes up a lot of our time. I'd rather do our stuff,
Do you write dialogue at the same time you're writing the story?
Yeah, usually I found that, with the bullet...
Again, we're just bullet points, but
with the bullet
point
points,
dialogue.
I will do bullet points and dialogue.
Okay.
It's usually the filling out the dots is often the description of the scene, usually, because the dialogue's a fun bit to write. It's. I don't think people like writing he got up off the ground, he walked this way, he walked that way.
Well, see, that when we were doing our shorts, that was the bit that I enjoyed. Was the actual writing of the actual story bit. Like dialogue, I couldn't.
But I've got to do it because that's my system. So when we sat down to write that film, we had to do it from scratch. But we still did a little bit of the storyboard. Remember we did some bullet points of...
Oh yeah, we knew
what we were
going to
but then we did the scene by scene then from that. The bullet points of because my brain, I jump all over the shop. But so you actually do the description.
I prefer just to kind of get a story down.
Yeah.
And then put it in. Yeah, I think that's just the way I would go about it.
I love writing dialogue. That's just I join the dots. So that's why it's very Patriarch is pretty wordy.
No, in fact, every other kind of script you've done. It's like dialogue straight away. Do you know, like in the last one you sent over to us that I haven't read yet, but I've seen the front. It's just like good. A whole lot of dialogue. But when I've looked back at like mine, it's all description and what's going to happen, and then later on there's a couple of lines. I've actually went through and found out all the lines of dialogue, and I've noticed there's not much.
Yeah. Oh, you had to give somebody for an audition, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like a big
I was like,
monologue.
what do I give her?
I was like that.
I may be thinking a dialogue, you just need good actors. You don't need, in a weird way, from a production point as well, because you just got people talking in a location, where your one is like, cut to bedroom, cut to hallway, cut to stairway, cut to, do you see what I mean? So in terms of, But even though we thought with that one, there's no point thinking like that, especially as they're like short films.
Yeah.
But you know, I think everybody's different. What did you enjoy about when we were writing your one, Keith?
He enjoyed figuring out how he's going to fucking film it.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I enjoyed most.
Because you had another idea, didn't you? Which you did by yourself, but then you weren't particularly sold on it.
It was kind of like something that had been done before the original one, wasn't it?
Because we did that. Did that pretty?
Kind of.
I liked that one.
The problem was because that was one where it was supposed to be a story of somebody on a hospital bed wakes up
The
and they
twist
can
was
see
good.
everything, but the trick was, and they can feel and hear everybody around them, and it's supposed to be like the story of the people popping in. They're supposed to hear what this story, and this guy had actually done horrible stuff, and I think they're supposed to be, do we turn him on and off or not? But the trick was, that was like a good 2-minute film, wasn't it? It's like dragging that out for like 15, 20 minutes was causing us some trouble, wasn't it? But then we came up with a new one, and we did that really fast. I'm sure we came up with it in about the script was not written, but the bullet points and the idea, it was hashed down about 20
because we literally just sat down after we put the other one on hold and was like, right, let's think of an idea. And then that's when I was saying to you...
Which is tricky, because it's hard to sit in a room and just go, right, let's come up
Go.
with a good idea.
Go.
That's not,
Throw some ideas.
I think it was just what would be simple. I think we just got... Why would be... We're like, I still want it to be in a room in one, so we thought, okay, it's in a warehouse. And I just want a couple... Okay, it's a family. There's kind of... It turned it around, so it was like an exorcism.
I think I think the way we kind of developed it towards, when you think about the thing, the thing, the film.
That was right. So
was the twist.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
So it was kind of what we liked, or you liked, was the paranoia of the thing, and like the test scene where they all test each other's blood, and then the thing. So the whole point's supposed to be the film starts on the aftermath of an exorcism. Maybe he's out of breath, the room's all destroyed already, but then they're not convinced that the thing has actually left the room, and they're trying to work out who it is, so they're trying to do tests, and everybody's turning on each other, and the paranoia and stuff like that.
That was the hardest part, I think, trying to find a test that we could do to
prove it.
It. That was difficult, but we found one, so you'll have to wait and see.
But that's
what happens.
Yeah, so...
It's clever. It's clever. Who wrote the one about, like, was it a taxi driver?
Yeah, I done that one as well.
Was it?
I like that one.
Why do we not do that one? We did like a psychopath pick people up and... he'd imagine... The people moaning in the back, and he'd imagine doing horrible stuff to them. Why do we not do that?
I don't know.
I think, again, that
it was quite
just
quick,
quite short.
It? Was it short?
So it was going to be difficult to kind of extend that out to at least 15 minutes.
It's an idea to flesh out for the future. I don't know. We're always going to do more shorts, aren't we? So, so have you any other tips for anybody that you think? My ones are very much just get it done. So worrying about the last bit is just getting the actual achievement of writing an entire script. You should massively pat yourself on the back on it. The amount of people have got a half-finished script in a drawer somewhere and not finished. If nobody ever sees it, you never sell it. It's still a hell of achievement in a weird way.
Doesn't matter about how bad you think it is. Show someone else.
Show somebody else. They'll tell you what it is. And even show other people expecting them to say bad things about it.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that the stuff they say isn't that bad. And usually, if you show a couple of people and they both say the same thing, that's not just somebody's opinion. That's kind of like more people are saying the same thing.
It's the same with once you've shot and edited the film. The first edit you watch is shit. It doesn't matter like how much you stuck to the storyboard or the script. It's going to be shit the first time you watch it, so you might as well.
It's good. As soon as you show somebody else, you're like, oh, that bit.
Yeah. So just accept that it's going to be bad and take the criticism.
That's it. You just want to get to the point where you're relatively confident with it, but you just know when I show somebody else, they're going to find what's wrong with it, and that's fine. Because when you do show, because that's our problem, is we're old mates from back in the day anyway. So there's no, oh wow, I think that script Dave's going to do is a mind-blowing piece of art. It's just, let's see what's wrong with it, and that's just natural.
Yeah.
And then if you come across it and you kind of get like, at the end of it, like when I showed you the first script, it wasn't like everybody didn't shit on it. It was just kind of like, it was good, but we need to improve this bit, and this bit. And it was just like, I was happy with the overall feeling, and everybody had good points. Just ask for a why. If somebody just says, I don't like that bit, say, yeah, but why? So if it's like, for example, the thing on with wanting 2 characters instead of 1 because of change. He's like, I think this needs to be another guy. Why? Well, the character's too different. He actually went, because if you notice, he was actually, that character was supposed to die at that point and not carry on.
Was he?
Yeah. He was the one that
in the interrogation room, wasn't
that dies. And then now he done it where his sidekick dies and he kind of makes it towards the end.
Okay, I can't remember that part. I just remember.
It was 6 years ago.
No, yeah, I
It
think
was a while
that
back,
was the last time, yeah. But no, yeah, it was the fact that he just he was a straight-faced professional person, and all of a sudden just he changed to a different person.
Yeah. I did another one I'd say, kind of similar to right about like what Sean was saying before about talk to people in the right lines, but in terms of where it come from is find what you love and just things that you love, because I love talking about because there's a big part of the story is about obviously these people that were in this military facility have kind of been pushed to some other kind of pushed to somewhere else, so to speak, where there's I have a habit of watching because I'm such a dum-dum and I can't understand real astrophysics. There are people like, Professor Kaku and
Michio Kaku.
Titus and all that, and actually explain things well, where somebody was talking about a multiverse and things like that, and that was kind of the genesis of the idea, because then I could use some scientific basis. Well, he said it, so it could happen.
Have you ever watched those documentaries and go, I understand this. I could get paid to do this.
I could be a
I
scientist.
know string theory now.
Yeah, but then you watch it again, you realise he's talking to the camera like he's talking to children.
yeah.
But yeah, no, get as much research as you can. Try and just get the thing done and stop going back and tweaking before you're actually finished. Read it out loud with other people. That's going to find you. Don't worry. What was yours? Don't worry about the structure and the what's the word? It's got to be a particular way. I would recommend. I mean, everybody uses Final Draft, but I actually wrote it on Word before I actually got Final Draft, and then it took me ages to friggin' stick it onto Final Draft afterwards. It's just not as simple as copy and paste, because you've got to chop it up into scene headings and stuff.
It doesn't matter what you actually write it on. Just having that kind of professional software helps loads when you're structuring it, because you can just press a tab and it changes scenes and stuff.
There's
like
little
that,
cheats you can do in Word to make it look like Final Cut now, in terms of if you're just interested in how it looks, because you can the parameters and things like that. But the problem is we use Final Draft because we put it into things like our scheduling software that actually cuts all the scenes. Tells you where a character's mentioned and things like that. So that's probably a good extra tip, is work out, because we use Guerrilla scheduling, isn't it?
Guerrilla schedule, Guerrilla budgets, and
Guerrilla budget, Guerrilla skeleton, and they take. It doesn't always work perfectly, but we did have to go through every single heading to make sure scene heading to make sure it's right. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, because on the software it is really clever, because it drags each character, each location, everything into the software, so it helps massively if you're going to go down that route.
Yeah. Okay, so plenty to think about, but should we wrap it up with our recommendation of the day? So it's kind of we like to wrap up with a hidden gem. Sometimes they end up being
recommendation.
Recommendation, not a hidden gem.
Yeah. Some people they've been using guilty pleasures. I hate the term guilty pleasure. I like the films I like.
No, you should be made to feel guilty for liking a film.
I like Tremors. Piss off. Do you know what I mean?
That was going to be mine, Dave. Thanks. No, I'm only joking.
Who wants to go first? Scott looks like he wants to go
ready.
Oh, are we doing the guessing it? Do you want to guess it again?
Oh, so you're going to tell us the story?
I'm going to tell you
I'm going to see if we can guess it.
You can guess it, okay.
Right,
cool. A mysterious man arrives at the offices of an FBI agent and recounts his childhood, how his religious fanatic father receives visions telling him to destroy people who were in fact demons.
I got it. Do you know
Keith?
it, Keith? Oh,
no.
Clue, he's in Aliens.
One of them is. Not that guy.
The mate. Oh, yeah. Go on, Dave. It's Frailty.
It was the first good film I saw Matthew McConaughey in, as far as I remember, because he was always on covers of DVDs leaning against a woman. Do you know, he's always like looking over his shoulder.
Yeah.
With the shirt
And
off.
I always hate until I watched that one and maybe Rain of Fire, where I actually thought, oh no, he could actually be quite cool.
I was going to mention Rain of Fire,
Rain of
but
Fire.
I thought maybe that's not.
Rain of Fire's there's
Yeah,
one by
yeah.
itself.
Oh,
Go
well,
watch
what's
Rain
that
of
tonight?
Fire as well. Rain of Fire should be ridiculous. It's an apocalypse caused by dragons. It should be fucking terror. It should be like one of those sci-fi channel. But it's got
It's awesome.
Christian Bale.
It's got a
How
good
are we,
cast.
how are we
Good
talking
cast.
about this instead of
CGI.
the one
I'm
that I've
sorry.
mentioned?
I got excited about it. But Frailty so it's kind of like it's
It's a great story. It's the concept and everything. You don't actually see, because it talks about demons and stuff like that. Dad thinks that demons behind everything, but you never actually see him because he thinks that they're demons in humans' bodies, like just average kind of people, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of those typical American deep south religious
so it's
fanatical
it's
kind
trying
of.
to work out.
And the twist.
is he-
Ooh, it's twists.
That's it. It's trying to work out. It's not really. It's kind of work out. Is this family doing it crazy, or are they actually seeing demons in people? And that's the whole. There's one brother who's like a certain way, and one brother who's in another way.
I think it was Bill Paxton's first
directorial
directorial debut, wasn't it? Was that his first?
Yeah, he was the first. I was saying on a different podcast the other day, which was, I don't get particularly sad when real actors pass away. Like what was that year when every musician, everybody loved that? And I mean, it's sad. I'll have a bad day, but Bill Paxton, when he passed, that messed me up for about a week. Everybody who didn't, he may not have been like the best like Oscar-winning actor, but you can't not like Bill Paxton. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people couldn't work out between him and Bill Pullman, but ever since seeing him as Hudson, even though Hudson,
I never understood that.
the Bill, it's just because they're both called Bill. It's
Bill,
stupid.
is that it?
They don't look like each other.
And he's in Terminator.
He's in everything. He's in so many.
And,
Predator.
and Commando, I think.
Predator 2, Terminator. Is he? True Lies. He's in all of James Cameron's.
Are you trying to
ones.
think which character he is in
Titanic.
Terminator?
Have you seen him in Near Dark? There's another recommendation for it. It was like the year after it. It's like a really good. It's like the first cool vampire film where Bill Paxton and they're like this again deep south. They drive around in a van which keeps the light out and stuff.
Oh shit! Yeah, I remember that film.
Lance
What about-
Henriksen.
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
the same cast as Aliens, weirdly, but that's actually a really good. Catherine Bigelow did it, who's also an awesome director now. That was one of her first films. It's actually really good.
I was going to say the best vampire film, Once Bitten with Jim Carrey. Have you seen that?
I think it was before that though. That was my point. But Bill Paxton is actually really good, and he's the best thing in that.
Yeah,
But no, Frailty is a good film. It's the first one where lots of twists. It's not. There's bits of horror in it. It's more. I say more of like a psychological
Oh
thriller type thing. It's not like a jump demon scared. It's more, are these people psychos and crazy, or are they actually seeing demons? And that's the whole story behind it, which I thought was quite.
And it's a good concept of just a conversation between a man and an agent over just a tape, like
they're
having a
talking about his
conversation.
story of his
the
life and
background,
where
yeah.
his family was, because it was the brother.
It's a good frame.
It's the brother who wasn't quite into the hunting of people and stuff like that.
Oh, is he?
That's a good one. So Keith.
okay.
All right, so
Bye.
fine.
Bye. So mine, I'm
We
going to
really shouldn't record these at the end of the day. So
No. You'll probably get this one, Dave. But it's, a civilian diving team is enlisted to search for a lost nuclear submarine and face danger while encountering an alien aquatic species.
it's the Abyss. It's as clearly the Abyss. Is it? Yeah, it's one of those where I've probably seen it so much, but you forget other people probably haven't.
I didn't realise that it was 1989.
Yeah, it was.
It was a well-good film.
I think it was James Cameron's first film after Aliens, if I'm not. We're talking a lot about Aliens today. But if I'm right, I'm sure Aliens was like 85, 86, and I think that was his next film. And then he did Terminator 2, as far as I can tell. But it's a great film. It's
love
like, I would never film that in a million years. You ever seen the making of it? Where they actually filmed it all in tanks. And what I thought was really interesting was the tanks, these huge, like industrial style, deep things. But they had problems with the light coming up from the top, and they're supposed to be really deep, so they got like
the black
millions
balls,
of black ball bearings because they couldn't just put a tarp over it because people need to swim up and breathe. But it's like, what's the story? It's kind of so it's like a mining facility, but then weird, creepy stuff starts happening at the bottom of the sea, and they're trying to work out what. but it's good because it's like a disaster film as well,
Yeah.
because things start going wrong in this oil rig that they're all under the
But
water.
it's a bit of a love story as
and
well.
there's a
isn't it?
love story, and there's like these weird sci-fi elements because something's causing the. I recently saw. Have you seen Underwater? With
Yeah,
Kirsten
that's
Stewart?
well good.
thought
I like that.
I thought that was very. They took a lot from the
Yeah.
Abyss, which is I still don't mind. But there's actually a director's cut of it as well, which is very different. It's like I think it's like an hour longer, but there's more. It's more about what the things are in the water and why they're doing it and things like that. And but yeah, that's a good recommendation.
I like that. That's it. Like now, not many people would have probably even heard.
Which
of
is
it.
weird because it's a big blockbustery
massive.
type film, but it's one of those which is it's definitely one of James Cameron's least remembered, isn't it? Because especially if you did that between Aliens and Terminator 2, a lot of people aren't going to remember that one in the canon of his filmmaking, because he did Terminator 2 and then did he do Titanic, and then he just freaking got ridiculous. True Lies was in there somewhere.
Did he do Sanctum as well?
No, yeah, I think he produced it. That's that other diving one, but he's freaking obsessed with water now. I think he did The Abyss and he became ridiculously... Everybody started getting wound up by his documentary show. And look how brave I am going to the bottom of the sea. It's like, no, just get some more aliens on the go, mate. Want to see some Terminators throw some grenades. But yeah, so...
Go on, what's yours then?
And to wrap up, mine's actually a documentary, and it's weirdly a documentary and a thriller. Because that's why I was thinking it, because it's the first documentary I had that I watched it like a thriller, because I actually watched it because it was twist and twist and twist, and it's basically the story of. Let me get it up here. Here we go. It's a documentary centered on a young man in Spain who claims to a grieving Texas family.
I know
that he is their 16-year-old son who's been missing for 3 years.
I love this film.
Yeah, it's
The Imposter.
The Imposter. It is amazing. In like watching a thriller.
So good.
Because there's this guy he was like this small French guy, so he could get away with being a teenage boy. But what's ridiculous is he's clearly got some serious issues, dark issues, but he also seems to be ridiculously either intelligent or just massive balls on him, because there's these layers to steps that he's got to get through to keep convincing people. So he was a homeless man. He was homeless and had nowhere to go. So he
gets arrested.
He gets arrested,
and then he does some kind of like Kaiser Soze thing where he's in the police cell and he just sees like a missing child.
Yeah, so they bring him to a police station and somebody leaves him alone in not like a interrogation room, but in like somebody's office. And while he's out, the guy looks through all his paperwork and sees the story of a missing kid. And he calls and he starts phoning people like this. So he knows all this information about this missing kid. So when the policeman comes back in and he's calling Interpol or the internet, somebody in Texas going, we've got this kid, he's saying, and they keep asking him questions and he keeps answering everything right. And then other people leave him alone and he starts making phone calls to people in America about who he is and blah, blah, blah. And just so much, and he just keeps convincing all of these official government people. And then he turns up with the family and convinces them that he is their son. And he's got different colour eyes. Yeah. He's got different hair, because he was like, he bleached his hair. He put this excuse there because he'd been captured by some like slave. Yeah. Like they'd done horrible things to him and they put chemicals in his eyes that changed because his story was so harrowing and that he'd been raped and things like that. People don't ask too many questions, do they? And they just welcome into it. But then you start finding that this family have got some dark secrets.
That's the twist I liked. I like that bit when he starts talking about the twist with the family and
like something's not.
Did the family really kill? Yeah.
So it's The Imposter. It's such a good film, but that's what it's I'm not a big documentary watcher, to be honest, but because they cut interviews with dramatization bits, but usually that's kind of cheesy when they do it on like TV type ones.
It's very well done.
It's so well made, and the actors in it are good, and it's so twisty and turny. I just looked because I was looking at an IMDb then for the story, and it's 7.5, and I never do it. But do you know when it tells you that you've rated it as well? I'm giving it a 9. No, I didn't give it a 10. But yeah, The Imposter, that was great.
Yeah.
So anyway, hope. I was going to say thank you for your time, Keith.
That's
I'm not
all right, no
thanking
problem.
Scott and Sean, they could piss off.
Yeah.
'Cause they're not here anymore.
Bums.
And picking up families. So I hope that helped, guys. We will see you next week with hopefully more filmmaking advice, and hopefully we might have some
Breaking news
and updates on Patriarch 2. So thanks for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.
To find out more about the making of Patriarch, follow the team on social by searching Patriarch Movie on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Or visit patriarch-movie.com for more information. This podcast is sponsored by Zimplify, sales and marketing automation software that helps your business grow fast. Go to zimplify.com/patriarch to get 20% off your first 3 months. That's zymplify.com/patriarch. We're also sponsored by Mostly T-shirts, mostly.com. Fun and random t-shirts and hoodies for real film fans. See if you can get the references. Visit mostlytshirtsmostly.com to buy your next favorite t-shirt. This podcast was produced by WAGYU Films.